I'm Tiffany from Tiffanys Crafts, and I'm going to show you how to make this beautiful hat. It's a triangle granny square hat, a shamrock granny square hat. And this video is a short version, and I do have a longer version on how to make this beautiful hat. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my YouTube page, Tiffanys Crafts. These are extra videos that I have on my YouTube page, Tiffanys Crafts, that can help you with this project if you need a more detailed review on how to make a triangle, how to make a magic circle, how to make sides and shell stitches, and how to whip stitch the squares together, and how to increase and decrease stitches. And these are the supplies and techniques that you will be using for this hat, and the type of yarn that I used. Now, this is the pattern that you will be using for the triangle granny square, which is round 1, and how to create the stem. And I also have later on in the video more detailed explanation on how to make this triangle granny and the stem. Now, this is how to do round 2 and round 3 for the corner and the sides for the pattern that you will use. And this is the pattern for the brim. It's for a small brim pattern and a large brim pattern, and you can choose one or the other. And both brim patterns have 4 rounds, and it has an optional to attach a pipe cleaner to the brim to make the brim more flexible. These are the granny squares that we're going to be making. This is a shamrock granny square. And the way that we're going to be making this is that this shamrock granny square is actually a triangle. The shamrock is the green part here, and this right here is your triangle. And then we have a stem going down here. And then we're going to turn this triangle into a square by doing round 2, which goes across here, and then round 3 is square. And the website's links from my YouTube page, tutorials can help you with this project. How to make a magic circle, and how to make sides and squares. So the way that we're going to begin this is we're going to make a magic circle, and then we're going to chain 3. That chain 3 is going to count as your first double crochet, and then we're going to work 2 double crochet into the ring. From there, we're going to chain 3, and then we're going to do 3 double crochet into the ring. And then we're going to repeat that one more time, and then we're going to slip stitch at the top. And that's how we're going to make this. When you're going to be ready to slip stitch at the top, that's when you're going to create your stem. And this is what the stem looks like here. And the stem is actually 3 chain of 3, and then you're going to single crochet into that chain. Then you're going to knot it and cut it. And then you're going to begin with a new color if you want, or you can continue with the green. I kind of like the new color because it shows the shamrock more. And then you're going to do your 4 corners, one here, 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 and here, your 4 corners. And how are you going to make that into a 4 corners if you have 3? Triangle. You just have a triangle right here with 3 corners. And the way that you do that is you're going to make right here a corner inside of the shamrock on the other side of the stem here. And you're going to make a corner here. And that's how you make the 4 corners. Then when your 4 corners are done, you're going to slip stitch, and then you're going to begin your 3rd row, which is a corner, a side, and a corner, a side, corner, side, corner, side, and corner. And then if you wanted this to be larger, you would just repeat this 3rd round, except for you would put an addition 2 sides here. Wherever you have a side here, you're going to make 2 sides for your next round. So each round would have additional sides. Then you go, and then when you're done, you want to leave a long tail here. You don't want to cut that, because that tail is going to help with putting your granny squares together. Now this hat that I have here is granny square hat. And it's made exactly like how we're going to do the shamrock. We're going to put all the squares together. You can use a whip stitch to do that. And then a crocheted brim. Now when looking at a granny square, it's going to have 4 corners. Every granny square has 4 corners. Here, here, and here, and there. Where these holes are, that's where your corners are. And you're going to have, of course, a circle in the middle. And the difference between this and your triangle squares, that you're going to have 3 corners here. And your corners are here, 1, 2, 3. But you're going to have here a stem. So you can see the difference between a triangle and a square, granny square, and what they look like. So we're going to start with a magic ring. And I'm using so I have just finished this triangle. And remember that you're going to want to repeat the chain 3 and then 3 double crochet into the ring. I didn't show that last part. And this is what it looks like when it's done. And I had made the 3 crocheted for the stitch, and then I single crocheted into here, into the chain. And then I did a single crochet up into here past the stitch to lock it in place and to move the stitching closer to the next corner. And so now I have just put on some white yarn. I'm using alpaca, a touch of alpaca, and I am getting ready to do the granny squares, the corners. I'm going to do the corners and the 3, and then I'm going to add 1 more corner to add 4 corners total, which is round 2 of this project. So I am going to cut this. This is not my working yarn, the green, anymore, because we've switched over to white. And if you have any questions on how to do granny sides or corners, look at my videos on Tiffanys crafts. I have a few on there on how to do sides and corners, which explains this a little bit better. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is the 4 corners, this row here, which is row 2. So we're going to do this corner, this one, this corner, and this corner. And you notice that, again, that we have 3. If this is our little shamrock, we only have 3 corners here, 1, 2, 3, but we have to make it into 4 to make it into a square. So we're going to add another corner right here on the side of the stem, and that's how we're going to get the 4 corners. So it's going to look like that. It's going to be smaller. This is 3. This square is 3 rows, rounds. So that's how we're going to do that. And let's start with, we're going to chain 1. Now we're not going to work in here, which is normally what you would think that you would make your first corner. We're going to do that later. If you're enjoying these beautiful pictures, these are my flag irises that grow in my garden, and it's on the video on Tiffanys, my main page, Tiffany Juliet, which is called Listen to My St. Patrick's Day Celtic Meditation 2. Harp music, Bible verses, ASMR, sleep, study, wedding. And all these photos I took of myself in my garden. And this is the, we've finished all 3, making all 3 corners, but we need to make a 4th corner. So we're going to be working on that now. And we're going to be working on the side of the stem, inside of the shamrock. So we're going to make that, and you're going to have 2 choices here, to make it inside of here or to make it right in here. And I'm going to make it right here. That I always do it right here. Because you're naturally going to see a part where the top of the stem is, and that's where you want to make that. So we're just going to make this as how we always did for our corners, which is a shell, chain of 2, and another shell. Okay, so we just finished our shell, and now we're going to do a chain of 2. That chain of 2 is what makes the corner look square. Okay, now we're going to be doing another shell, which is just 3 double crochet. Song's called Danny Boy. I played that on my harp, and this picture was taken in Pikes Peak, Colorado Springs, Colorado. So we're going to be doing round 3, and round 3 is going to have shells in it. Sides. We're going to have sides in it. Side is a shell. So remember, a corner is shell, 2, chain of 2, and another shell. And that's how we get this look here. And then when we're going to do the side, it's just 1 shell. Remembering that a shell is 3 double crochet. So we're going to have a corner that's going to be right here, and then in the space here we're going to have a shell and a corner, and then in the space here we're going to have a shell in the space right here, and then a corner, and then we're going to have a shell down at the bottom where the stem is, another corner, a shell here, and the top of our granny square is right here. The round is right here. So this would be a good time to put a stitch marker here, or to just put a piece of thread here to remind you that this is the beginning of your round. Shamrock granny square hat that I'm making, I pinned all of the squares together using my preferred tool to doing that, which is just little stitch markers. And so I do have another video online, which is a long version of how to put these squares together. Basically, I'm using my yarn needle, and the top of my granny square is actually the side of the granny square. And that's the way that I was making these. So I have it knotted here. And I use the working yarn, and I cut a very long tail so I could use that tail to put the granny squares together. Now you don't have to do that. You can just cut your yarn short and then use a different colored yarn if you want, or the same color. And because the top of my granny square is here, and it's almost on the side, but I'm putting these closer up together, and I have to sew them up higher. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to sew going up these V's up to the very top of where the chain of 3 is for the granny square. And then I'm going to whip stitch the top of this granny square to the top of the first granny square. And that's usually how I begin that. And then I'm just going to whip stitch all the way down to the chain of 3, which is at the bottom. So it's going to be your bottom stitch. You can see that I have them together with stitch markers. And that is how I'm going to accomplish this. And then I reserved a granny square for the top, And when I have all these granny squares sewn together, oh, and it's very important to sew them not right side up, but on the inside of it. After I have that done, I'm going to put the two ends together, and I'm going to sew that. And of course, again, I'm not going to be doing it right side up, but inside out. And when I have that done, it's going to look like a circle. It's going to look like a perimeter. And you could use that just as a head on top of your head to go over your ears, to keep your ears warm if you wanted to. But if you wanted to make a closed hat out of this, after you sew the two ends together, you're going to sew this on. And you can see that this is going to be smaller. This granny square is much smaller than the perimeter of the whole hat. And so you're going to sew this directly onto this hat when you have this completed. And it's not that hard at all, and I'll show you how to do that. And if you need some extra help with this, I do have a tutorial video on how to do this online on my YouTube page, Tiffanys Crafts, and it's much more detailed than what I'm going to be showing you in this video. Okay, so we are going to sew this together using the whip stitch on the back loops. If you wanted to. If you want to do it, or you can do it on all the loops. I'm going to do it on all the loops. So I'm going to go across like this. And we're just going to keep going in the same direction. And it's good to have very bright light. I usually use an LED light when working. Or I like to use the natural sunlight. That's good too. If you're working in front of a window. Or to have an LED light right above where you're working. I'm going to go across all of the loops here. So we are going to talk now about the brim. And I have 3 examples of brims. This brim, which is a sunburst granny square hat, that is on my YouTube page, Tiffanys Crafts. All of the brims I'm going to show you are on my YouTube page. And this is a larger brim. And I have a pattern for a small brim and a large brim. And you can do your Shamrock granny square hat with this brim. And this brim is, the pattern is you're going to reattach your yarn from the base of your hat that you finished, which is about right here. You're going to chain 1, and you're going to SC, single crochet, in the front loops only. And then at the end of that row, you're going to slip stitch. In round 2, you're going to double crochet. And with this pattern, you're going to be increase in the first stitch, and then you're going to increase in every 6 stitches and slip stitch at the end of the round. In round 3, you're going to double crochet. You're going to chain 2, increase in the first stitch, and then you're going to increase every 5 stitches and then slip stitch at the end of the row. And in round 4, you're going to do double crochet, chain 1, increase in the first stitch, and then increase every 4 stitches and slip stitch at the end of the row. And then what I did, which is optional, is I added a pipe cleaner to this area here. I just sewed on a pipe cleaner to make the brim more flexible. And then I weaved it in between the stitches in the round. And then I wanted this brim to be stiff, so I added fabric stiffener. And I do have a video on how to add fabric stiffener to this brim. And this turned out very nice, and it has a nice look to it. And then I put a ribbon in between the hat and the brim, and I tied a bow to make it tighter, to fit tighter on the head. And then with the other 2 hats that I'm going to show you, the granny square hats, I used the small brim pattern. And I'm going to give you the pattern for the small brim and the large brim. And so with the small brim, there's 4 rounds. And round 1, I reattached the yarn about right here, and I did single crochet in the front loop only, and then I slip stitched at the end of the row. And then in round 2, which would be right here, I single crocheted and I increased in the first stitch. Then I increased every 6 stitches, and then I slip stitched at the end of the row. And in round 3, I did double crochet to make the stitches longer. So I chained 2, and I increased in the first stitch, and then I increased every 5 stitches, and I slip stitched at the end of the row. And in round 4, the last round, I did single crochet, and I chained 1, and I increased in the first stitch, and then I increased every 4 stitches, and then I slip stitched at the end of the row. Now, in order to make this hat look kind of wavy, that's why I was single crocheting in the front loops. And with every round, you want to crochet in the front loops to get that nice look to it. And then this hat also has the same brim, the smaller one. Now, when you're looking at brims and you're thinking about the brim that you want to make for your hat, your single crochet is going to be shorter and your double crochet is going to be a longer stitch. And with the longer stitch comes a longer brim. So that's something that you want to think about. And if you don't want your hat to be kind of wavy and you want it to look more straight, you would not crochet in only the front loop, but you would want to do crochet in both loops. Alright, we had just finished the brim, and I slip stitched in the chain of 2 in the previous round. And I wanted to mention that my hat, the brim, is 2 inches. Now, if you wanted to make a hat and you wanted to do a brim and you wanted it to fold over, you would do it 4 inches and then you would fold it over. But I don't want my brim that big, so I'm going to cut the yarn and knot it, and I am going to double knot it and then weave in the ends. I did try the hat on, made sure that that brim was as long as I wanted it to be. I'm going to use a yarn needle to weave in the ends. I like to weave in the ends because I think it gives a better finished look to it. Plus, if you were just to trim it right here, you would have a knot right there, and it would be kind of obvious that there was a knot right there. So if you weave in the ends, it's pulling that knot more towards the back side of the hat, and the knot won't be so obvious.